everybody, and welcome back to the Life Unlimited Coaching channel. We have a special guest here today. We're here with Ann Miller, she is also a health or a coach, fitness, nutrition, macro coach, whatever you want to say. What's your business called?
Rethinking Fitness with Annie.
Rethinking Fitness. I love that name.
Thanks.
And so she's going to talk about. We're just going to interview her and talk to her about her journey and what motivated her to become a coach and any messages she'd like to share for you lovely people out there listening. So, and why don't you tell me about that name. Why did you name it Rethinking Fitness?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, because the way that I learned, there's, my whole journey into coaching and the process of the coaching, the first program that I went through to get my macro coaching certification. It's called a transformational macro certification. And so it's a slightly different type of coaching certification. And all that means is that rather than approaching things, like the way my coach describes it is, there's basically like four main types of coaches. There's like the cheerleader, there's the accountability coach, there's the teacher who's really great at educating their clients, and then there's the advice giver. And so we kind of do all those types of things when we're coaching, right? Like there's elements of educating people, there's elements of like, hey, you got this, you could do this, there's the cheerleading. So all those things. And then when you work from the transformational level, you work on some of the beliefs, the ideas, and deep core things that are keeping people stuck. And so so part of my training was through some NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Anyway, so just a slightly different approach to it. So the thing that I realized getting to the point where I actually convinced myself, yes, I can do this and I can become a coach, there was a lot of rethinking on my part, things that I thought, like, you and I talked about this before, like, oh, if I'm going to become a personal trainer or a fitness coach, I have to look a certain way. If I have to approach nutrition a certain way, I'm only going to reach my goals if I do X, Y, Z. And so just realizing for myself, there were a lot of things that I had to rethink. I had to approach from a slightly different level than what I had been thinking of before. And so I was like, I want to help people rethink their nutrition. I want to help people rethink their fitness. It doesn't have to be so rigid and so black and white. So that's kind of where that came from.
I love that. And how long have you been doing it?
So I got my macro coaching certification just March of last year. And then I got my personal training certification through NASM in May. So just in May of last year as well. So just barely over a year and a half.
Cool. How has that specific approach that you're using, how has that like turned light bulbs on for your clients? Have you noticed specific instances where it's like, yes, I'm changing the way people are thinking about fitness?
Yeah, I mean, it totally, just like anything else, right? It totally depends on clients. Like, so there are definitely clients that come to me that are just more in the accountability game. They really just need the accountability coach. They need someone to check in with every week, and they don't have a lot of negative mindset strapped around their body or food or whatever. Maybe they've kind of just been in a healthier place with some of those things. But I think especially older women tend to have a lot of things wrapped up. I mean, it doesn't have to just be older women, but sometimes our body image plays a huge role in the actions that we're taking. And we might have like this huge number on the scale that we're super duper attached to and thinking like, you aren't fit or whatever until you reach a certain level. And that's not true. And so one of the biggest things that I've seen changes in relationships with food, helping people be able to approach food differently and noticing so one of the things that I like to say to my clients is that food is amoral. It doesn't have a moral value. It has a nutrition value. So there's nutritious food and then there's not nutritious food. And you and I talked about this before, right? But that has been a pretty big light bulb moment for several of my clients because they're like, oh, what do you mean donuts aren't bad? Like, I thought donuts were bad, and it's like, no, they're amoral. They don't have a moral value. That we attach so much moral value to our food. And then we also have sometimes this moral like superiority if I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever eat those types of things, whatever, and so helping people remove some of that has been helpful. I've seen a lot of shifts in women because of that. And then the scale, that's a big thing too, is helping people let go of that number on the scale and the emotions that they have tied up into what they think it means if they weigh a certain amount. And I feel like for me, I was totally there. And so that's why it's important for me to help share that message and help women shift that, because I was trapped for a long time thinking I had to be a certain number on the scale, and my own personal value was tied up in that number on the scale. And so
When tell us a little bit about your journey specifically and how like your weight loss journey or health journey or and how you kind of morphed into this person who can lead others.
yeah, so I think kind of interesting. I didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of knowledge about nutrition or movement. I felt like, so I have one sister who is super duper athletic, and we were really close in age. And so I kind of, she's my best friend growing up, and I kind of always wanted to do what she was doing. And so like one thing was, she joined the high school basketball team. She was like super great at basketball. I was not so great at basketball, but I wanted to play with her. And then I kind of realized throughout the year of playing, like it wasn't really for me. I didn't love it. I didn't love it. We'll just leave it at that. But I felt like that was kind of this little bit of introduction into exercise for me, like, running Sweet 16s, things like that in basketball sucked. But, you push yourself and you feel kind of proud of yourself for doing something that's hard. So there were some kind of like basic introductions into movement, but I had this identity, I'll just say, that like I didn't like exercise or I wasn't athletic. And so that wasn't for me because I wasn't the athletic one in my family. And so I got married super young, had my babies super young. I was 21 when I had my second baby, and I joined Weight Watchers with my sister to try and lose the baby weight. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, I was 21. I was baby. What was I doing? But I joined Weight Watchers, and I think the great thing about Weight Watchers is it did help me learn some good habits. I learned how to start paying attention to some things. I think a huge downfall of Weight Watchers is, their point system kind of keeps things like in the dark for you. So you just stay within their realm of things, and it keeps you in the dark. And so it was a good introduction to some basic habits, which I really needed because I wasn't really taught that growing up, but it falls short, right? So I did have some success with Weight Watchers, and I felt like I did learn some good habits. And one of the things that I learned there was that there should at least be this separation between exercise and nutrition, that they're not like in a marriage, which we kind of like to put them together. Like you have to exercise and you have to eat, and you should do both. Like those are both parts of a healthy lifestyle, but they're separate, right? Like not paying attention to how many calories you burn during a workout, but just working out because you want to move your body and working out because because you can essentially. Anyway, I don't want to be too rambly. I am getting kind of rambly. Sorry.
No, I like it. Keep going.
Anyway, so yeah, I think the biggest thing is I didn't know a ton about nutrition for a long time, but I really, really liked exercise. Loved it. Found several different things that I liked doing. Ran a couple half marathons, did a triathlon, got into road biking for a while, which I absolutely loved. It was like, it rocked my world. I loved riding a bike. It was so, so fun. And around the same time that I started biking, I started kind of learning that it was important for you to do cross training as well. I'm cycling a ton. And then I kind of started to get introduced to this idea of cross training. And so what I was doing as cross training was beach body workouts. And so I didn't have like in order to get access to the Beachbody workouts, I think I had to sign up under a coach or something, but I didn't really I didn't really engage with the coach. I just did the workouts, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that was probably the first time that I had this thought of like, I love exercise so much. I love being able to move my body like this. And so many women, I think, you talk to them and they're like, oh, I just don't like to exercise, or I run because I like cookies, or, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like at that time when cycling was like rocking my whole world, and I felt like everyone needed to ride a bike, go do something, I just kind of started getting excited about that and thinking I wanted to share that love of exercise with people, but I would immediately shut it down because I was like, oh, but I don't look like a fitness trainer. Who am I to tell people this, And so I just shut it down, and I wouldn't really let myself get into this realm of thinking this was something that I could do. Anyway, and so the funny thing is, finally in 2020, right before everything shut down, I had gotten to the point where I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get a personal training certification. I'm going to make it happen. And that was in March of 2020, like literally the week before everything shut down, that I decided I was going to do it. And then the world went crazy, and, we didn't know what was going to happen. And I went, oh no, I shouldn't, like, this is a waste of time. Who's going to want to pay for fitness stuff right now? And I just shut it down again. And anyway, and then I found, around that same time, I found Amber Brueseke. Biceps After Babies is her brand, and she's who I trained under. And I found her and I started listening to her stuff. And I mean, I just binged her content. She has a fantastic podcast. I binged her content. I joined her program, Macros 101, in January of 2021. And that really, really got my wheels spinning. And I just thought, like, I gotta do this. I gotta teach other women. Nutrition doesn't have to be super complicated, and that love for exercise. And so I kind of started it. So in fall of 2021 is when I joined the macro coaching program and finished it in March, and then got my personal training started.
Awesome.
Long story.
I didn't know she did no, that was good. I've heard of her. I've had friends that really like her. I had a friend that did the Macros 101 program and really loved it. But I didn't realize that she trained coaches to be a coach. That's cool.
She does. She is fantastic. Yep.
I believe that.
Honestly, I have I totally fangirl over her.
Yeah.
She's awesome. I love her content, and she's super inspiring to me. A lot of things about what she does, and just kind of the person that she is, that really I do a lot. So
cool. Yeah, I've heard only good things. So that's also a good program to look into, listeners. What on Instagram? She's Biceps After Babies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's awesome, and it's a really affordable program.
Yeah,
like Macros compared to other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I remember my friend really liking it for that reason. You have to do a lot of the work, but like it's not.
Yeah,
like you're not the one. Like it's not like a coach like doing all the thinking for you. You do the thinking for yourself. But the way that she's designed it is like you learn everything you need to know, which is really cool.
Yep.
I remember.
And so that's what she does. And then she takes coaches through that same methodology. And so she teaches you how to ask your clients questions and help put the power back into them, so that they're asking themselves these powerful questions and coming to the answers by themselves, rather than you giving them. Because the thing is that, like, we can give people, and I'm sure you know this as a coach, right? Like, you can give people all kinds of knowledge, but sometimes it's not just like, yes, we need knowledge. We need to understand some of those basics of nutrition and things like that. But most of the time, it's not the knowledge that's holding people back. But being accountable to you is only going to get them so far. They've got to learn how to be accountable to themselves. And a lot of that is going to be from like making that decision for themselves. This is what I'm going to do. This is, instead of me saying like, hey, you should do this. Like, this worked for me. Well, yeah, sometimes it's helpful to hear what worked for someone else, but what worked for you might not work for me, so.
Exactly. I love that. So how could, or how does your program work now? Like how would you say, like, you've outlined how you help people, or what's the outline of how you help people now in your program?
So I like to work with people for about 12 weeks. That's kind of my preference, because I feel like 12 weeks is a little bit of the sweet spot where it's like shorter amounts of time. You can push and you can see results in a shorter amount of time. But if someone works for me for a little bit longer, about 12 weeks, now we're getting into where we've been able to make things more of like lifestyle changes instead of just like this quick crack and burn, like, let me hurry lose weight really fast. And sometimes people come to me and we're not, I'm sure it's the same for you, we're actually not even working on weight loss. Sometimes someone's got to do a reverse diet. Sometimes we gotta like throw away all that stuff and we're just doing a lot of mindset stuff. It totally depends on where the client is. So I do kind of have a framework that I like to take people through. So the framework that I like to use is, call it my MAP framework. So I have macros and mindset is the M, awareness, and then the P is process. And so I kind of like walk people through those steps, and it depends on where they're at in their journey, where we go first. But I would say awareness is the biggest thing, and awareness with what you're eating. You and I talked about this, the qualities and quantities of food that you're eating. So awareness in what you're eating, awareness in your movement patterns, awareness in your sleep habits, just paying a lot of attention to some of those things that kind of get put on the back burner and that we don't really pay a lot of attention to.
Okay, that's cool. The MAP method.
Yep.
I like it. So what would you say, let's say somebody's, trying to figure out, they want to lose weight, or they're starting their health journey and they don't really know where to turn. What would be your number one advice, your best advice?
So awareness, starting with that, like, okay, what are you eating? So I like to use food tracking, especially initially with people, because it brings so much of that clarity to the picture. And all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, I thought that this was only, 150 calories, but I just ate 400 calories, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I like to start people with tracking food. I like to help people move away from it eventually, unless it's something that they like. But sometimes people find tracking really, really tedious. But I like to say, like, download a food tracking app. I like Macros First. Really like their free version of that. Obviously, since I'm a macros coach, that's probably where I'm going to lead from, right? But I like Macros First. So just putting in, like, your goal is, when you're first starting to track, you're not trying to lose weight. You're just we're just getting awareness. So when they put their information into a food tracker, they should just put it in that they're trying to maintain their weight, which is really hard for people, especially if they think they want to lose weight. Then they're like, but what if I just put in this instead and it gives me that? The tricky thing is, like, that's not your goal right now. We're just working on awareness. So give me at least 1 week of just tracking your food, and just let's see where you're at. Let's see how many fruits and vegetables you're eating. Let's see how much water you're drinking. Let's see how many calories you're consuming during the day. And then that's going to give us a good idea of where we need to go with different. That's probably the biggest thing.
Step one.
Awareness. Yeah.
Downloading a calorie. I would agree with you. I think awareness is a lot. We feel a lot, but we don't. This is really inappropriate, but I had a mentor, because I worked for we coached gym owners, because I was a gym owner, and then they mentored me, and then I got to coach other gym owners. And like, you would be surprised, and clients do this all the time, but they say, well, I feel like I'm doing really good.
Yes.
And so he would say, well, F your feelings, like, give me the data.
Yeah.
I would never say that to a client, but it really did. Like, anytime someone would be like, well, I feel like I'm getting enough leads, or I feel like I'm eating enough vegetables. It's like, well, feelings mean nothing. Like, please give me the data.
Yeah.
Because we feel a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so awareness, I like that. Give me the data. And I've actually used the phrase, we make data-driven decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So until you can give me the data, we're not going to make a decision.
Yep.
And we've had clients come to us just recently, actually, we had a lady that was like, well, I feel like I'm just too busy, and I feel like she had all these feelings, you know. And I was like, well, we can't, you're not giving us enough data, so I can't make a decision on anything. And what's funny is she's a business owner, and so she was like, oh, like it clicked for her all of a sudden, like, oh, like tracking all of your numbers, like that's why you're doing it. I'm like,
Yeah.
same. You don't, if you don't know how much money is coming in and out of your bank account, then you can't make a budget.
Yeah.
You know, I like that. So how can people reach you if they're interested in learning more about what you do and how you do it?
So one big thing is I feel like I don't want to work with people who don't want to work with me, right? So unless you're like, hey, this is a hell yes, I want to work with you. I don't want to work with people who are like, yeah, maybe. So I feel like a great way for you to know, does this lady sound like she knows what she's talking about, and do I want to work with her, is my podcast. And so that's part of the reason why I created the podcast. Also talk a lot, so it works. So it's Rethinking Fitness with Annie. So I pronounce my name Annie, but it's spelled Anne, Anne. So Rethinking Fitness with Annie podcast, and you can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I feel like that will probably give people a pretty good feeling of whether or not they like me as a person. And then if they like me as a person, probably they're going to like my coaching methodology. And I talk a lot about my coaching methodology on my podcast and the way that I approach things. And so that's probably like the first thing. And then the other thing is Instagram or Facebook, at Rethinking Fitness with Annie on Instagram. I'm pretty small still. I'm working on growing my Instagram. So right now it's like kind of married with my personal page, but I'm trying to separate it. And then Annie Miller on Facebook if people find me there. So
Perfect. Well, everybody go and like and follow her and learn all you can from her. See if you want to work with her.
Yeah.
And thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Kayla.
Thank you.